Every, Hey everybody, this is Ramon Ray, founder of smarthustle.com. Thanks for joining us for another exciting Smart Hustle podcast. Our whole goal at smarthustle.com is to inspire and educate small business owners to start and grow successful businesses so they can live the lives they want, providing for their families and supporting their communities. I'm glad you're here with me today. If you're hearing the sound of my voice, please give me a 5-star review on iTunes or other platform. If you're hearing the sound of my voice, you don't like the sound of my voice, still give me a 5-star review. Either way, it's fine with me. And definitely make sure you go to smarthustle.com to get all the insights from Smart Hustle and myself. And remember for sure to sign up for our email newsletter where you can get tips like this on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I would translate it into CST for you, but it won't go well. So with that, let's jump into today's discussion. Happy to be here with my friend, someone I've got to know for some months now. We were just talking offline, maybe a year or more, give or take. And that is David Hill. David Hill, how are you? How's your family? How are things in your world?
Ramon, life is brilliant, my friend. Blessed. Man, a friend of mine always says I got more than I deserve, man. So life is good, boss. How about yourself? It's always good to see you, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Likewise indeed. On this day as we record this, beautiful Monday. So glad you're here. David, before we jump right in to the tactics of what I want to touch on you about sales and marketing and helping small businesses do that better. I know you have a lot of tips on that, and you're a master person of the phone in particular, cold calling, yes. A lot of ninja tips you can share with us. Please give us a brief understanding of who David Hill is, where he's been, where he's at today. Help us introduce us a bit to David Hill, where you've been, and then what you do. You give us an overview of yourself, and then we'll get some of these principles out of you to help small businesses grow. But the floor of yours, give us an introduction to Mr. David Hill.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I am a dad of 3 amazing daughters, for starters, a husband. I've got an awesome wife of 11 years. And, you know, I started in the phone trenches 37 years ago in a Kirby call center, calling and scheduling appointment. Do you know Kirby?
As in Kirby, is it vroom, vroom, vroom?
Yes.
I love it. Yes.
Back in the day, the $1,500 vacuum cleaners. I don't know what they cost now.
I bought one or two from the.
Oh, did you? There you go.
And the Kirbys worked well. They were like what, the metal cars back in the day. I mean, those things true. Were good. Super
suction, super salespeople. Yeah, that's how I learned. I used to call people and get them to agree to let us send over a guy that was going to demonstrate the vacuum cleaner for them. And that's where I started. I did that for, I don't know. Ramon, I think I responded to an ad that said, make $100,000 a year. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. And it was a lot more challenging than I expected. I did it for a while. I had some okay success. And then I ended up going to work at a credit card company. Back then it was MBNA America Bank. And I worked in a call center, and we literally called people and got them to do credit card applications. And, you know, thank God that's not, you know, you're not allowed to do that anymore. But back then that was standard practice. So we would go into these 4-hour shifts, and there was this big office with 50 cubes. And what would happen is we'd have a script and a phone, and we'd call. And as soon as somebody say yes, I'd raise my hand, I'd stand up, and the manager would come over and close the deal. And that was how I got credit. So I'd be going into these 4-hour shifts, and I'd be raising my hand 3, 4, 5 times sometimes. And other people would be there the whole 4 hours, never raised their hand once. And it was consistent. But then I ended up leaving just because I felt like some people probably shouldn't have been, you know, we were dealing with seniors. It was different. Right. So I said, something's not right. I left. And obviously they're not allowed to do that anymore. But I went to work for a magazine, Ramon. I worked at a magazine for about 15 years. I called telephone books. I called trade publications. I literally cold called, door knocked, went door to door. And I acquired clients for this magazine. We built a regional magazine that went to condominium associations, and just grinded, man. Just grinded on the phones through doing that. I picked up AT&T as a client, Verizon, Benjamin Moore. I mean, names that everybody knows. Those were my clients through calling ad agencies, through door knocking, through being persistent, through follow-up. And that's it. And then I went into real estate 19 years ago, and I built a real estate business that got me into Gary Keller's Top Agent Mastermind. So I was mentored by Gary Keller for about 5 years, and ran a bunch of Keller Williams offices. And now I'm, still sell a little bit of real estate, but mostly I I teach salespeople how to be a lot more effective, not just on the phones, but with the whole process. Because the phones are only really one step, but the process of following up and having the right offers and being compelling and all that stuff. So that's essentially what I do. I'm a Grant Cardone licensee. I love Grant's. Grant has some phenomenal sales training, and I think that's one thing that I would say throughout the years, I became really, really good at selling but I never took any real like sales training. And I think that's what Grant teaches, that sales training. Like when somebody's like, oh no, I need to think about it. Like, how do you work through that? And so I think that has been really cool. What has attracted me to Grant, being somebody that's 37 years in sales and attracted to his sales training. So there's my intro.
I love it, David. That's a beautiful intro. And I'm curious, can everyone learn how to be a bit better at sales? Are there some people that you could smell or look at and say, Ramon, yeah, this person here, based on my years of experience, they should just go be a lifeguard or something? Do you have hope that every business person, you can teach them something and they can get just a bit better or a lot better at it? Is it something, I mean, obviously the answer is yes, but is it something really teachable, or do you have to be born with it? You have to be like a David Hill in your DNA. Help me understand that.
No, I don't think so. I am not an extroverted person. I know there's kind of that stereotypical salesperson's the life of the party. I think anybody can learn to be a great salesperson, Ramon, if they're willing to learn, willing to get a little uncomfortable, because sales is uncomfortable. You deal with rejection, right? And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that get in people's way. I get out of our head and understand, like, first off, fundamentally, I need to understand my product. What am I selling? And I've been in 4 different industries. I knew my product. And I knew the value it brought to people. So when you're coming from a place of, hey, I've got a product that can serve a need or a problem you have,
right?
Then you can help somebody. So who wouldn't be a sales? To your question, I think for some people, if you're in your head and you're fearful of rejection, I know a lot of people just can't get beyond that. I would say, if that's something that, you're just terrified to pick up the phones, and the couple times you do, it's that much work and takes that much energy out of you. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't be doing sales if you can't figure out how to make it about the other person and not about you, because that's really what it's about, right? Like if I'm coming from a place of service, then I'm going to be okay calling anybody because I know I'm there to help them. Mm-hmm. But yet, if it's all about me and me not looking good and me getting rejected, and then it's a different energy.
Wow. And so that means also, is it fair to say that the person who's more successful will do their best? And let's notwithstanding cold calling, because I'm assuming, but you teach me, but I'm just making some assumptions that's a different solid bucket. But the more I get in tune to the person who I see has a need, does that mean then if I'm being a service, the more yeses I should get? Is it math, or am I off on something, or is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think it's a fair statement. I think, it's a numbers game no matter what, right? Sales is a numbers game. But yeah, I think when you're clearer and you're more confident in your ability and yourself and your products and what your products can do to help people, you're going to be more effective. So your numbers will be better. And I think that's one of the struggles with sales is, if you call, 20 people, maybe 2 of them are going to do business with you. 2 of them will never do business with you. And 16 of them, you got to follow up with. Right. I mean, that's the reality. And you need to kind of figure that out and get that mindset in your head. And I think that's where a lot of people maybe get hung up, because they expect everybody to like them, everybody to want to do business with them, everybody to do business now. And then frankly, a lot of salespeople just don't have really good follow-up systems, which the majority of the business does come from follow-up anyway.
Absolutely. That because I guess when you're calling, I got my kid on my lap, I'm out, I'm eating dinner, you called the wrong time, I'm in the hospital with my whatever. And so that just naturally, going back to numbers, most people
depends on who you're calling.
Yeah. what are the other scenarios? And if it's beyond the person being busy, what are some other scenarios that could be? If it's not busy, what's other follow-up scenarios?
I'm saying it depends on you calling B2B, right?
Oh, okay.
Or B2C, right? So business, it's going to be different than business consumer, but you're right. With what you said, yes, you're calling people. And the thing is, a lot of times people aren't expecting. My daughter just was up here standing next to me and I didn't even see her come in. So
hey, little Hill, how are you?
Yeah. So B2B, is different. You call B2C, a lot of times people aren't expecting your call.
Yeah.
So it is a cold call. And, you have to be compelling. You have about 7 seconds before somebody's gonna make a decision whether they want to continue listening to you or not. And that's the reality. So one of the things that we do, Ramon, is I work with a lot of real estate agents, and we do focus on specific sellers that either had their home on the market that didn't sell, or they're trying to sell houses themselves.
Okay.
So we know there's some interest there. Like it's not like we're just cold randomly going into a phone book and saying, I'm going to call A and see if they want to sell their house. So it makes it a little easier from that perspective. Like we know they're at least interested in what we have to offer. But at the same, like you said, a lot of times they're not expecting a call. They could be with their kids. They could be whatever. So be compelling. And if it's not the right time, then be okay calling back. I use a Chris Voss strategy. I got this from Chris Voss. He was on my podcast years ago, and and
by the way, but Chris Voss, an amazing book, Never Split the Difference.
Yes,
you have to get
Never
the book
Split
and
the
read it,
Difference.
read it. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's right here somewhere. Yep, right here. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
look at it right here in front of me. There
mine as well.
Chris was on our podcast, and what Chris's intro is, did I get you at a bad time? Now, what do most salespeople say, Ramon?
Is this a good time to call you?
Yes, they say, is this a good time? Is it ever a good time, Ramon, for a cold call?
Never. For
like
any
you're
call.
in the middle of
my
doing
sister
something,
calls me, Ramon.
You're bringing your kids to school.
Right. My sister calls me and Ramon, did I interrupt you? Every time you called, it's not scheduled, you interrupted me. Every time. Yes, you did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because you're in the middle of stuff, right? So by using Chris Voss's strategy, which I learned years ago, I learned all these little things here and there from Chris, from Grant. I studied with Tom Hopkins back in the day, some other trainers. But when you say, did I get you at a bad time? It's actually a pattern interrupt because you're giving control of the conversation back to the other person, which people don't expect on a cold call.
Right.
They're used to you saying, hey, did I get you at a good time? Like, no, it's not a freaking good time. I got my kids, I'm bringing them to school. I'm doing this. I'm in the middle of stuff. I got 600 emails in front of me. No, it's not a good time. But when you say, did I get you at a bad time? They're like, like, what do you need? Right now you have their attention.
Yes.
It's interesting.
I love it.
Try it. If you don't believe me, if you're listening to this, try that out and you're going to see it works. It's crazy.
And if it works, make sure if you're watching this, you capture this and tag David Hill and say, David Hill, you helped me out. So let's touch on this, David. Let's touch on, before we get into some of the tips that you would share with people, I'm curious, B2B versus B2C. Can you help us understand what are the differences? Any different, again, if you can't cram all of David Hill's multiple years of knowledge into one interview here, but help us understand just the differences and what you would tell clients you work with and, the kind of differences to be aware of, if that's a fair question.
That's a good question. I've been in the B2C for a while now.
Fair enough. Okay.
I would say the difference was when you're calling companies, they're more expecting the calls like we kind of just talked about. I think, they're also, you can talk about their products, their services. I'm trying to think, what are some of the other characteristics?
No, that's okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you had a two ways. Let's go back.
I would say just it's more of a professional call.
Got it.
Depending on the business too, because listen, we used to call blue collar landscape companies that you're going to treat the blue collar landscape owner different than you're going to treat the president of the credit union, right? So really figure out, who you're calling. Something I learned years ago is always be at the level of the person you're calling, not just in the way you speak, but also in the way you dress, the way you show up, the way you present yourself. So I think just adapting, honestly. I mean, if you're calling, and the other thing with businesses, you got me thinking now, going back to my book, I wrote the sales playbook, but you deal with gatekeepers a lot when you're dealing with businesses, where when you're dealing with B2C, you're not dealing with gatekeepers. I mean, sometimes you are.
The name of your
Sometimes you
book
got a
is
wife.
The Sales Playbook. Yes, The Sales Playbook.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, Samara, can you grab me a copy of my book right there on the top? See, go
grab
right
20
on the
copies,
first
20
shelf.
copies, grab 50 copies. Yeah.
Nope, next one down. That one, yeah. Bring that over here, please.
Awesome, awesome. The Sales Playbook
Yeah,
by
but yeah,
David
that's
Hill.
my book, and wrote this. Thank you.
Thank you, Samara.
I go Samara. And yeah, and you have a whole chapter in here about gatekeepers, getting systematized.
Yes.
Lifting the 800-pound phone. I mean, it's so much. You're bringing me back to the old days, bro. I love it.
The old days work. So David, let's dive into the things that you teach. I want to get into real estate in a minute here. That's your specialty, but also what did you learn as a Grant Cardone licensee? What does that mean? And what do you teach people? And first question, I guess, who do you teach? Break that down for us. Tell us what that means and give us some lessons you learned, some tips from that. At the Smart Hustle podcast, we always want people to listen and be smarter as they're listening to us. So tell us what it is, but then give us some tips that you learned and can share with us from that.
Are you from Cardone? Is that what you're asking?
Correct. As a licensee.
Yeah. So I think from Cardone, one of the things that attracted me to him was sales training, as I mentioned earlier. A lot of people, get into sales, real estate specifically, because people say, hey, you would be really good at sales because you're you have a good personality. You're a really talkative person. Sure. You're good with people. That doesn't always translate to sales, though. I mean, it translates to me and you having a conversation right now, but doesn't necessarily translate to me being able to sell you something, me being able to help you make a decision, help you, close on something, right? Like, because people get hung up in indecision, in uncertainty. So when you're a really, really good salesperson, I'd say the biggest thing I've learned from Grant is to help people work through uncertainty. And I'd say one of the biggest things is the fact that when people won't make decisions when there's any uncertainty. So now when I'm listening to people or I'm dealing with, and I've always kind of had a knack for helping people anyway, to an extent, but I just think now I understand it more clearly. Like, okay, there's an uncertainty. So it's almost like you can ask somebody, well, hey, what is it that you're uncertain about? Right. And the other thing that Grant's guys do a really, really good job of is, they're just direct to the point. I mean, they're clear, no ambiguity at all when they're calling people. They let you know exactly what they're looking for, who they are, why they're calling, the intention of their call. And I really believe that's something that's missing in a lot of sales industries. People call, we try to bait and switch and manipulate. We beat around the bush instead of just going, hey, this is who I am. This is the reason for my call. And I really like that about Grant's training as well. Is that helpful? It's
very helpful. And I'm guessing what we can learn from that, David, is that the more direct and clear you are, even though it'll get you faster to a no, that's a good thing. Meaning, even if you've defined, and correct me anytime I'm wrong, I'm just repeating what I'm hearing. Even if you've defined this is the right person, David Hill has a problem, I can solve it. Got it. But the more you're saying, hey, David, we're selling juicy steaks, that are crisp. I can get there and I can say, oh, I'm a vegetarian. Great. Thank you so much, David. Goodbye. Is that kind of meaning just be upfront, lay it out. Now we can move to the step 2, I guess, of clearing any ambiguity. That's how I'm saying it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just making up words as we go, but yeah.
But is that a good way to?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's a good example of, you're a vegetarian. Okay, awesome. So, I'm probably not I'm probably not gonna be able to help you with what we're doing, but if I ever switch directions, we'll give you a try back. Right. Yeah. So 100%. But I think in real estate specifically, one of the things we focus on, I think I don't know if we were talking about this before the call or during the call, where we work on sellers that are looking to sell.
Yes.
Motivated people that either are selling themselves by owner, people that had homes on the market didn't sell, people who canceled their listings, potentially people that need to sell because they're in a hardship situation. So these are motivated people. Smart, you want to say hi since we're on a live podcast here? Just Say hello to my little daughter, Samara.
Sure. Hey, Samara, how are you? You can say hi.
Yep. Let's,
hey, Samara, how are you? I'm Ramon Ray. Your dad is
this is
amazing.
Ramon.
Amazing,
Ramon is
amazing.
an awesome gentleman, and he's really funny and got a great personality.
How old are you, Samara?
Good.
How old are you?
9.
Nice to meet you. 9 years old. My kids are adults. They're 26 and 23. Pleasure to meet you. God bless you.
All right, let me finish this up
I
now,
lost my
okay?
earring.
All right, that's cool. We'll figure it out after. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Losing an
Yes.
earring is a big deal. You better take care of that as soon as you're
It
done
is.
with this.
All right. So that was a first, Ramon.
That's wonderful. I'm honored. Thank you for having
Thank you.
part
But
of
it's
our podcast.
family, right? So family's important.
No
and
problem.
We do that. I'm sorry. Where were we?
Yeah, we were talking about we went over very direct, and we were talking about that's
Yes.
one thing we talked about very direct. Then you're talking about in home sales, it's people who are also have that need as you're approaching.
Yes. Yeah, and I think the challenge is a lot of people are trained to call and just get in front of people.
Right.
Like say whatever you need to say to get in the house, and then you get in the house, and then you feel like somehow you're going to be able to persuade this person to do business with you. Like, oh, you know what? Just say, like an example is, okay, I've got a buyer for your house. Can I come look at it for a buyer? But you really don't have a buyer. And then you get there and there is no buyer. And then there's this whole kind of like this awkward feeling, right? So
and now I lose trust.
And you lose trust.
Yes.
You lose trust. And not only does it hurt you, but it hurts all the other real estate agents.
Yeah.
Because now they bucket us all where everybody's the same. Yeah. So that's one of the mistakes I see a lot. And that's why I love the direct approach. And like you said earlier, I want to know right out of the gate. One of the things that Grant teaches that's interesting, I've never heard this before, is they always give price first. Here's the price of what we're charging. This is 3,000, 4,000, or 10,000. Yeah. So now you know right up front, this is what it costs. Okay, now let me explain it to you. And then we can decide which one makes the most sense for you.
Yes.
So when I call, here's what we do. We've got 3 different ways we can help you. Nope. Don't even work with buyers. Don't even do that. So that's not even an option here. There's other agents that do that, and they're probably all calling you, but that's not what we do. You know, we have a cash buyer program, right? So does you know what I mean? So it's a different conversation, and people appreciate that.
Got it. And David, now tell us, what does David Hill, I know you're a realtor and you have a team. What do you do, David? Can people rely on you to help with them with sales? Is that one part of your business? Is it, help us understand the David Hill empire. What are people getting?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I was a trainer for Keller Williams for a lot of years. I used to go around the country and teach their curriculum. I mean, that's what I love doing, Ramon. I'm passionate about that. My wife and I are both still licensed realtors. I have a broker's license. So we do real estate. You know, we'll do 10 houses a year or 20 houses a year, whatever it is. I think we did a few more last year. But yeah, what do I do is I want to teach people to do what I do. That's what I love doing. I love training and I do some coaching. I love training. So someone comes to me and it's like, David, I want to learn how to be amazing on the phones. I want to learn how to close. I want to learn your system for follow-up. How are you talking to someone and then 2 years later you're listing their house? Or, you know, those are the things I teach people, that whole process.
Got it. And then what do you find are the biggest, we talked about some of it already, but someone's coming to you who's very new, set up the scenario you want. But my point is, how long does that take before you say, you know what, Mary, you know what, Joe, you know what, Ramon, I think you're ready. And I think we've trained you to the point where you're a bit better. Is it them learning 1 or 2 key tools, just remember it? Or is it more like a 2-year process? Give us an insight. What's that like?
No, I think if people follow the direction, Ramon, and they're showing up and put into practice, there's no reason you shouldn't have solid results in 90 days. Like 90 days, you should start seeing results. Yeah. It's like anything else though. It's what you're willing to put into it.
Correct.
You put in the work, you're going to get the results. So we work with, real estate agents. I've worked with insurance, a few financial services. I mean, so it doesn't matter what you're selling. It's all the same fundamentals. Yeah. Right. The difference is the lingo, but then it's follow-up. It's follow-up. It's having a system in place. It's systematizing. Here's one thing I learned from writing my book. When I wrote this book, I used a ghostwriter. I didn't write it myself. and she interviewed me. It was a 10-month process, Ramon. You wrote a book, right? You have a book, Smart House.
5
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah. Did you write it? Did you write them yourself, or did you use a go? Okay, awesome. So
Meaning wrote it myself means everything, the IP is mine, but work with editors and others to help add to it, change it. Yes, but it's
But were you actually doing the writing, or did you have like me, a ghostwriter?
No,
okay,
yeah,
fair enough.
yeah. For
Awesome.
Grow Your
So you
Solo.
wrote-
Now this one's only 15,000 words, but I wrote every bit of it. And then the part of it is the course I wrote with Seth Godin as well. So yeah.
So I love it. Seth
So
Godin, name dropping.
ghostwriting works, helps you.
You saw how I roll with Seth Godin, right? When I threw the the Hail Mary. That was awesome. And hey, listen, even though I didn't get what I wanted, I still feel it's a win because I asked.
Absolutely.
I got uncomfortable. I got outside my comfort zone, right? I asked. But
you were talking about, you were saying, I don't want you to get off track. You were talking about training somebody or how long it takes or what you can do for them, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no reason that after 90 days, someone shouldn't start. I mean, we have people that see results a lot sooner than that, but it really depends on what you're willing to put in. How much work are you willing to put in? Right. Are you willing to show up? Are you willing to practice? You know, I deal with salespeople. What's the biggest challenge with sales, Ramon? Objections.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Right. Objections. Right. So I don't care what you're selling. You could be selling, I don't know, whatever widget you're selling, right? You can sell hats. What are the objections you're getting? Right. Selling real estate, objections. Selling insurance, objections. So no, in your business, what are the 7 or 8 objections that I'm going to be getting? This is how simple this is. And then, okay, so we know these are the things they're going to say to me every single time. This is what I'm going to hear. So now figure out 4 or 5 ways to handle each of those objections, and just keep practicing that over and over and over and over. It's like an art, dude, like over. Right. And then you do that. And then, I mean, that's one piece. And then you obviously have to have really good systems in place for follow-up and things like that. But I mean, it can start right there. I can have somebody start getting results just from being more effective, picking up the phones and calling people. Yeah.
And is that way, David, that you have I don't know if you still do it, but you had your Clubhouse, you have the live testimonials where you're so confident that you're able to teach people, no, right now, let me show you some things. I think that's how it was, something like that. Is that
I do live calls. I haven't done them in a little while, but I used to log on Clubhouse and do live calls. Yeah. And I'll tell you why I did that, Ramon, is because there's a lot of people on Clubhouse that sound like they're, pros and they know what they're talking about, but they really don't have any experience. Yeah. So by me doing that, I'm showing people, hey, what he's saying actually works. Right. What, and I think that, like, I know what works. I've been doing it long enough. I've been doing 19 years in the real estate space. Yeah. I was hired by Gary Keller personally to call independent brokerages around the country. I set up appointments for indie brokerages to meet with Gary Keller. Wow. So I know when people are saying things if they're going to work or not. Right. So it's just, that's why I was doing that. Just so people say, okay, this guy actually is authentic. He knows what he's doing. Right. It works.
No, I love that. And one more question I have for you, David, a final question, but then I'd love to hear about how people can contact you is, can you tell me, when do you tell people, or what's the signs, kind of teaching me now, when you stop? When do you say, Ramon, you know what? They've raised so many objections. Or is there a point where you say to yourself as you're training people, you know what, this is a call, probably if you wanted to exit out, follow up or not, you're safe doing it. Like, you wouldn't call it a failure. You wouldn't say you're giving up. It's like, no, I can detect something's not right here. If you understand what I'm trying to ask,
Yeah, I think to the question, so if the question I'm understanding, how do you know when to back down?
Yeah, maybe that's the right question.
Keep pushing forward. Yeah. Yeah, I think it depends. I feel like it's not something I can tell you. I think you have to be confident in yourself and in your abilities, and then you're just going to know. I think the only way, it's a muscle, it's experience, right? It's like, how did Michael Jordan take all those crazy shots and make them falling backwards, right? Ready to, it's because he did it so many times. Yes. So I think you just have to put in the time, Ramon, and then you start to get more comfortable. But, I mean, there is, and but here's what I'd say is don't, I think sometimes we're so worried about either what other people are going to think, or am I going to sound desperate, or am I not going to sound what I'm talking about, that we don't even take the actions. I would rather see you take all the actions and fail. And who knows, maybe you make some mistakes. Maybe some people do get upset with you and say, you're super aggressive. At least you took action, right? That's why I was alluding to the thing with Seth Godin earlier. Hey, that didn't work with Seth, but hey, I still asked. At least I didn't have to walk away with my head down like, oh, I should have asked Seth, but I was too scared to say anything, right? You know what I mean?
You can ask again as well. You know,
exactly. So I would rather people take the action and than not take the action. Yeah. So, but figuring out when to back off, I think that's something you got to kind of figure out on your own. But we can teach you how to be proactive and get out there and just get into a conversation. This is a conversation, brother. That's it. It's just being in conversation with people and not taking yourself too damn serious, and figure out how to have fun with it. I mean, you can even do that.
And I think your analogy of Michael Jordan was so right, because it'd be like me asking him, when do you not take the shot? There's the obvious things, of course, when you're a million miles away, but I bet that he has to judge that as he's going up. And I'm not a basketball guy, but I'm imagining here, as he's going up, that's when the muscle you talked about, he decides, do I shoot, or while I'm going, you know what? There's a better opportunity, an open guy there. Let me pass it. We've seen that 1,000 times. So there's no proper judge until you're in the fight, you know. So I like your answer.
You have to have done it, right? You have to. It's like, what's his face? I think Mike Tyson or someone just talks about, a real fight. A real fighter when they get punched in the face, right? Like because that's how they respond. That's how they know what to do. So yeah.
No, I appreciate that. David, what's the best way that people can get in touch with you? What's the best way? Those who are listening here and they're saying, you know what, I want to improve my sales. I definitely want to do that. Maybe they're in real estate. They need help with their real estate business or whatever it may be. And I have definitely some recommendations for you. What are some ways that people should reach you, or the one way people should reach you?
Yeah, I'd say, my website is David Hill. Well, I'll give you a pathtomastery.club is my main site. So that you can go there. You can see all our training options. We have training options for anybody up from month to month all the way to 1 year. You can follow me on Instagram, David I Hill. I tend to do a lot on Clubhouse. Clubhouse has been really good to me the last year or so. We've been doing a good amount on Clubhouse. And yeah, I think that's probably, Facebook, same thing, David I Hill. That's the way to find me. If you want to send me an email, david@pathtomastery.net. So yeah, I'm a pretty easy guy to get in touch with. I love it. And then you can watch the Ramon Smart Hustle podcast, and I'm here too. So now I'm up to that next level, man. I'm excited.
For sure. I mean, after Keller Williams, you were like, what's the next level? Ramon Ray. Very kind of you, David Hill.
Yeah, well, hey, you know how it is, bro.
I do. But hey, everybody, this is Ramon Ray, smarthustle.com. We've been talking to David Hill with Path to Mastery. Definitely should see him up if you're looking to increase your sales. And I must say, David, one thing that I know, many people listening to this, you think you're selling well, you think you're doing well, but it can't hurt to dive into somebody else's programs who's done it and learn a bit more. But thank you all for listening. Again, this is Ramon Ray of smarthustle.com. If you're hearing the sound of my voice, we definitely love you to give us a rating, share this with somebody else. We'd really appreciate that. You can find information and insights like this all the time at smarthustle.com, where we seek to inspire and educate small business owners to start and grow successful businesses they can provide for their families and support their communities, all at smarthustle.com.